Before we get into it, tell me which country you're watching this story from. I love seeing where all my viewers are tuning in. And if you enjoy stories about karma, HOA drama, and neighborhood justice, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Now, let's begin. It started on what should have been a normal summer afternoon. The sun was out, the air smelled like freshly cut grass, and my kids were outside playing with water balloons in our own front yard. For years, they had spent their summer breaks doing just that, laughing, running around, and enjoying their childhood. But then, she moved in across the street. Karen. She was the type of person who believed peace and joy were violations of some invisible law only she understood. Within a week of moving in, she had already complained about our lawn being too green, our trash cans being too close to the curb, and our fence not being HOA-approved beige. So it wasn't entirely shocking when, one day, as my kids were laughing and spraying each other with the hose, Karen came marching across the street, her phone already in her hand and her face twisted in fury. At first, I thought she was going to ask them to keep it down, but she did something far worse. She called 911. Yes, she actually called the police because my kids were playing outside. The operator must have been as confused as we were, because she stood there in the yard yelling about disruptive behavior and public disturbance. My kids, aged 8 and 10, froze in fear as 2 police cars pulled up minutes later. The officers were professional, thankfully. They asked a few questions, looked around, and quickly realized how ridiculous the call was. One officer even apologized to me before leaving, but the damage was done. My kids were shaken. That day, I saw the joy drain from their faces. My son asked if they had done something wrong. My daughter refused to go outside for a week. And that's when I decided Karen had crossed the line. But instead of losing my temper, I planned something that would make her wish she had never picked this fight. I started with research. It turned out Karen wasn't just rude, she was also in violation of multiple HOA and city ordinances herself. Her backyard fence extended several feet beyond her property line. She had installed a shed without a permit. And the best part? She was running a home business out of her garage, a loud late-night candle-making operation that violated zoning rules. I documented everything. Photos, videos, timestamps, the works. I even caught her dumping leftover wax down the street drain, which was a major environmental code violation. While I was collecting evidence, I also learned something else. Karen had just applied to join the HOA board. Apparently, she wanted more control over the neighborhood standards. That made me laugh, because once I was done, control would be the last thing she had. The next weekend, I hosted a small community event in my yard, a barbecue open to everyone in the neighborhood. I invited everyone except Karen. I set up a bounce house, a grill, and even a lemonade stand for the kids. People showed up in droves. They brought food, chairs, and good vibes. Karen, of course, called the police again. She claimed there was an unauthorized event and noise violations. When the police arrived this time, they recognized the address immediately. They checked and confirmed we had every permit necessary for gatherings under 50 people, and smiled as they joined us for a burger. Karen stood across the street, fuming, watching her little scheme fall apart. That's when I executed step 2 of my plan. I sent an anonymous report with all the photos and documentation to the HOA board, City Code Enforcement, and the Department of Environmental Services. Within a week, inspectors visited her property. First, they found her shed was unpermitted and partially on HOA land. Then they discovered her illegal business. And finally, they hit her with a hefty fine for improper waste disposal. The total was over $4,000 in violations and mandatory removal of her backyard setup. The HOA board, furious about her lack of honesty, withdrew her application to join. In fact, they started investigating how she'd even been approved to live there in the first place, since her paperwork had some inconsistencies. Within days, Karen's perfect little world started falling apart. Her backyard was torn apart by contractors to move the fence. Her business was shut down, and her spotless HOA record, the one she bragged about constantly, was now permanently stained. But karma wasn't done yet. A few weeks later, I decided to rebuild my kids' confidence and show them that joy always wins over hate. We transformed our front yard into a playground paradise, a huge slip and slide, sprinklers, and even a small inflatable pool. Neighbors joined in, and soon the entire block turned into a community water day. Even the local news showed up after someone posted a video online of kids laughing, firefighters spraying water, and neighbors cheering. It went viral. Neighborhood comes together after HOA Karen calls the cops on kids. And guess who ended up in the background of that viral video, glaring from her porch with a face full of regret? Yep, Karen. The comments were brutal. People called her the fun police, the Grinch of the suburbs, and queen of HOA complaints. The best part? The HOA president, who had secretly disliked Karen for months, publicly apologized to us for her behavior. She even suggested naming the next community picnic after my kids, calling it the Freedom to Play Day. Karen eventually put her house up for sale, claiming she was moving to a quieter neighborhood. No one believed her. Everyone knew she couldn't handle the embarrassment of being the neighborhood villain. When the moving truck finally drove away, my kids were outside playing again, laughing freely. I stood on the porch, coffee in hand, watching peace return to our street. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't anger, it's happiness. And in the end, Karen couldn't stand to see anyone happy but herself. So yeah, she called 911 over kids being kids and ended up being the one everyone wanted gone. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And let me know in the comments which country you're watching from. I love seeing where all my viewers are tuning in. Stay kind, stay strong, and remember, karma always finds its way home.